Just a couple days before opening day here, and Ryan Divish delivers a punch to the gut for Mariners fans across the nation. Bryan Woo will go on the IL with elbow inflammation. He followed this up with a quote tweet and a couple replies here, which we'll get into. He didn't feel great warming up for his last bullpen and couldn't get loose. He underwent a MRI and it came back clean with no damage to the UCL repair. Mariners GM Justin Hollander said this is similar to when Woo went on the IL last season. And finally, with no structural damage, the hope is that Woo can get the inflammation out of the elbow in 7 to 10 days and resume throwing. If you guys remember last year, Bryan Woo went on the injured list towards the end of the year in like September, and it really felt like more of a innings preventative measure, less of an actual injured list stint. Whether that's true or not, I mean, that's just, my thoughts behind why an IL stint happened. Of course, elbow inflammation happens, and especially when guys have had Tommy John, you really need to be careful with that arm and with that elbow. So being cautious with Bryan Woo is definitely the way to go. And I see a bunch of people in the comments already saying, why don't we sign Jordan Montgomery? We should have signed Blake Snell. Bryan Woo going on the 15-day injured list should not make or break this season and should not be a cause for giving any of the top free agent pitchers, $20 million. Like, they were never going to do it to begin with, but Bryan Woo missing 3, maybe 4 starts of the 20 that we were probably giving him this year, given how many innings he threw last year, and they probably need to kind of ease him into that larger innings role, because last year he threw the most innings of his entire career, across the minors and the majors. You don't want more elbow inflammation or more arm injury problems cropping up for Bryan Woo going into just his baseball career. And my pessimistic side thinks that might be the case of, well, Bryan Woo's had Tommy John. Like, there's lots of concern about his overall stamina and how much he has pitched in the last calendar year. Elbow inflammation to start the year is not great, so hopefully all things go well for Bryan Woo. If you're in need of some retail therapy after the Bryan Woo injury news, look no further than Simply Seattle to supply you with the best Mariners gear heading into the 2024 season. Not only did they just have their largest hat drop ever with a wide variety of snapbacks, truckers, adjustable hats, and more, they've got satin jackets, hoodies, shirts, like the shortstop hoodies where it's like a jersey and a hoodie. They've got dope merchandise year round for not only the Mariners, but every Seattle sport that you can really think of. Go to simplyseattle.com and at checkout use code MOJO10 for 10% off your order. Get geared up for the regular season. It's only a couple days away. Simply Seattle, they've never let me down. I know they won't let you down either. Now let's see if the new number 5, who that's going to be for the Mariners, with Bryan Woo being on the injured list. And it probably goes to Emerson Hancock. Emerson Hancock is the most likely option up next. Emerson Hancock pitched to a 10.24 ERA in spring across 9 2/3 innings. Not what you want to see, especially out of a guy that you probably had pegged as starting the year in the minors and being your 6th starter and a guy that you can call up when you need to. Having to do that at the beginning of the year is probably not what you expected when you kind of set up the rotation as far as the coaching staff goes. And although Hancock's stats don't look great across the spring, his final start was actually pretty solid against Arizona, throwing 4 innings of 1-run ball. So if you can take something from that start and carry it into the regular season, that should be the goal for Hancock. With the uptick in velocity and just overall better looking stuff, Hancock, it might not be too bad for the Mariners for a couple starts in Woo's absence. But missing out on Bryan Woo for 3 extra starts, it's not make or break, but it doesn't feel great, because Woo was put into a pretty unfair situation last year as far as getting called up when he wasn't likely expecting to make his debut last year. And he gave us 18 starts and threw 87 2/3 innings pitched to a 4.21 ERA and a 1.209 whip for a 96 ERA plus, so just below league average there. He struck out 93 batters and walked 31. So Bryan Woo, all things aside, the couple big blow-up starts, he showed flashes of brilliance, and especially in his final spring training start, bro went scoreless. He went hitless for 4 innings and struck out 5 Milwaukee Brewers back on March 14th. So missing out on Bryan Woo, it's not something that I'm really panicking about a ton, but if I was to say that I'm not a little bit concerned about the potential injury history going forward, he's building up a resume. He's building up a track record of these little ticky-tacky injuries that could pile up. And that's my major concern is, if Bryan Woo's health is not sustainable, ultimately it's going to be hard to, one, keep him healthy, and two, justify having him be your number, because like you're then just always going to have a number 6 in your back pocket that you feel comfortable being your number 5 instead. Because if Woo's never going to be healthy, or he's going to only give you 15, 20 starts a year, the longevity there just falls out. It completely falls away. So I hope that's not the case for Bryan Woo. Obviously, the initial reports of the fact that there's no damage to the UCL and that the inflammation should go down in 7 to 10 days, that's a great sign. It's a great sign that Woo will resume and should be back, say, towards the end of April at full strength, ready to help this Mariners team for a playoff push in 2024. And Colton and I think that they're very well equipped to do that. So check out our entire MLB predictions video that we made. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, even though it's kind of unfortunate news. And go Mariners.